Natural News. Help stop former Monsanto VP from attaining top position at FDA. Sign the petition. And the one man who may be responsible for more food-related illnesses and deaths than anyone in history, Michael R. Taylor, has just been promoted from U.S. Food Safety Czar to Senior Advisor to the Commissioner of the FDA, a position which would enable the giant biotech company Monsanto to silently and legally feed cancer-causing vegetables to every living person who is not 100% strictly organic. President Obama has appointed the former Monsanto vice president and lobbyist Michael R. Taylor to the throne. This is the same man who was food safety czar for the FDA when GMOs were allowed into the U.S. food supply without undergoing a single test to determine their safety risks. And this is like putting terrorists in charge of the world's food supply. What do you think the cancer numbers are going to look like in 2016? So who is Michael Taylor? Probably somebody you've never really heard of. Well, a quick search into his background. He started off as a staff attorney for the FDA back in the late 70s. By 1981, he went to a private practice at King & Spalding, a law firm that represented a biotech company, a little company named Monsanto. Then in 1991, he left the law firm and went to the FDA, back to the FDA, and created the post of Deputy Commissioner for Policy. And between 94 and 96, he moved to the USDA, where he was Administrator of Food Safety and Inspection. Then he returned back to King & Spalding and then went on to Monsanto to become Vice President for Public Policy. Does this sound like a revolving door? He once again, in 2009, returned to government as Senior Advisor to the FDA Commissioner, where he pledged $20 billion to fight hunger in Africa over the next 3 years. Taylor was a senior fellow at a research think tank, Resources for the Future, where he published 2 documents on U.S. aid that were both funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. And we know how loving they are and how much they really want to help you. And now we've got Obama, who wants to appoint this guy to one of the highest levels in our food safety. We've got a clip here from the video that we carry, The World According to Monsanto, and it's all about Michael Taylor. So let's go to that clip right now.
Early on, a gentleman by the name of Michael Taylor became the Deputy Administrator of the Food and Drug Administration right at the time that they were about to set out their policy.
Who is Michael Taylor? Today he heads a foundation called Resources for the Future.
Hello, Marie-Monique speaking.
Hello, it's Mike Taylor.
My questions are about your role. I mean, when you were working at the FDA, before being hired by the FDA, you worked as an attorney for Monsanto during 7 years, didn't you?
Well, I was a partner in a law firm of which Monsanto was a client, and I worked on some Monsanto matters, yes.
And apparently, if I understood well what I read, the FDA created a new position for you, Deputy Commissioner for Policy?
Well,
because there was a special need at that time at the FDA because of the new GMOs?
It had nothing to do with GMOs. Nothing at all to do with GMOs. I wasn't the author of these policies, but that's just false.
He moved over to the FDA in July of 1991. Up until that time, he was at a law firm called King & Spalding. His personal clients included not only Monsanto, but the International Food Biotechnology Council. And he had drafted for them a proposal for how they would like to see genetically engineered foods regulated. And if you look at the proposal that was written for IFBC, that was Michael Taylor's, with the final one that was published, it looks very, very similar. So if he didn't write it, it looks like somebody took what he wrote and changed it slightly for the policy.
Mr. Taylor was the Deputy Commissioner at the time, and he provided the leadership for the project.
And if you remember, this is the same Obama that said he wasn't going to hire any lobbyists or any government insiders, which, of course, we know he's done exactly the opposite. And even back in 2010, Obama gives key agriculture post to Monsanto man. Today, President Obama announced that he will recess appoint. Notice he was doing this back in 2010, not just last year. He appointed Islam A. Sequidi To the position of Chief Agricultural Negotiator, the Office of U.S. Trade Representative. Sequity is a pesticide lobbyist and Vice President for Science and Regulatory Affairs at CropLife America, an agribusiness lobbying group that represents, guess who? Monsanto. So as you can see, Monsanto is making their way into every facet of government, especially when it comes into overlooking food safety. And how is it? How are they able to do that? Well, let's look at their lobbying track over the past few years. We go to another Natural News article. Monsanto spends a whopping $2 million in the third quarter of 2011 lobbying the federal government. Later on in the article, they source opensecrets.org, and let's just look and see how much money they've given over the past few years. $5.1 million in 2011. In 2010, they spent over $8 million, and in 2009, $8.6 million. These are all for lobbying. But their largest year was 2008, when it spent only $9 million bribing the federal government to betray the American people. But look, this isn't just Obama. This isn't just the Democrats. Back in the days of good old George W., remember Dan Quayle, Vice President? And I'm going to read along. You can go to the Seeds of Deception, page 130. First full paragraph. The biotech industry's success with these government leaders became apparent in May 26, 1992 at the Indian Treaty Room of the old Executive Building. There, Vice President Dan Quayle announced the Bush administration's new policy on genetically engineered food. And he said, I quote, "The reforms we announced today will speed up and simplify the process of bringing better agricultural products developed through biotech to consumers, food processors, and farmers. We will ensure that biotech products receive the same oversight as other products instead of being hampered by unnecessary regulation." There it is, Seeds of Deception. You can get the book also at Infowars.com. I would say check it out. It's a great book, especially when it talks about the gene gun and how they actually, the process of making these genetically engineered foods, they fire genes into other genes and see what sticks. I mean, I don't know if you could call that science, but they call it science, and they spend a lot of money on it. And obviously we know it's for your health because they do lots of studies to check and see how these things react with you. Oh, that's right, they don't. They, what they do is go after the scientists who are doing those studies and ruin their lives, which you could see in Scientists Under Attack. Our food supply should be kept local. It shouldn't be big agribusiness. We did that experiment since the 1920s. We've been doing that experiment, and it hasn't worked. And we see that. We've depleted our soils. We're creating crappy food. We're creating giant farms, animals being packed in, and we know this doesn't work. We know there are alternatives, and we know it's about keeping it local. But they don't want the food supply to be kept local. People like Monsanto want to be in control of this so they can control your very lives. But we're not done with Monsanto yet. It seems they've come out with a new sweetener, just like aspartame, but it's called neotame. New neurotoxic sweetener, FDA says no label needed, not even in organics. A Monsanto-created chemical, neotame, is likely more toxic than aspartame. The FDA has quietly decided that we don't even have the right to know if it's adulterating our food, even if it's been labeled organic. Let's go to the next quote. Up to this time, neotame hasn't been sold to the public, but that hasn't been necessary. It's been used widely in prepared foods. So the less awareness the less public has, the less likely it is that the public will try to avoid it. For the most part, that technique has worked. For now, very quietly, the FDA has decided that the public shouldn't be informed when neotame is included in any product, even organic products, which are supposed to be unadulterated with the chemicals and are not required to state when neotame is added. So there you go. Of course, this article from the group Gaia Earth, they do offer a solution. Their solution is very simple. If you want to avoid foods adulterated with neotame, then grow them yourself. That's basically what they say. So that's one of your only choices, or join a food co-op or keep it local, as they say. Moving on to another glorious topic.